Hello. Cheers. Welcome to the stream. Today, I'm going to do a quick tutorial on how to make Reese big giant Blade Runner-y type Reese base drone things that are really kind of cinematic and cool sounding. And this is a response to one of my patrons who is interested in the subject and prompted the tutorial. So I'm kind of making this for him and anyone else who's interested. So I was going to sample my hardware, my Eurorack here, but I'm not really set up to do that right now, so I'm going to use software. But if you have access to hardware, specifically analog, I highly recommend using that. So let's dive into Ableton and I'll get started. So you're going to want a synthesizer that has saw waves. So I'm going to open up a synthesizer that is that has some analog modeling going on. So let's see what I can open up here. I'm going to go to, let's get let's go into the Cherry Audio. Cherry Audio has this Moog model. So if you have a Moog, use that. I'm just going to, gotta sign in to my account. Let me make sure that, okay, we're getting captured. Okay, opening. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to sample middle C. And I'm going to go to, I said I was going to use a saw wave, but this only has triangle, square, triangle. I think it only has triangle and square. Let me see. Oh no. We have saw waves. Okay. Sounds great. So I love you, Cherry Modular. You're great. We only want one of these oscillators right now. So I'm just going to sample this oscillator a bunch of times. So I'm going to open up an audio track. I'm going to set it to receive from Moog. So I'm going to sample this Moog here. I'm just going to hit record. Okay, so if you're using an analog synthesizer, you're probably going to have even more drift. But if you listen real close, you can hear that this saw wave isn't actually the same the whole time. You can hear that it's got this kind of movement to it. And that's called drift. And anything that's analog modeled will have this programmed into it. And I'm not quite sure how they do it, but they sample the hardware and they figure out exactly what the drift sounds like, and then they're able to kind of recreate that in the code. But it's going to sound better if it's analog. And you don't have to use a saw wave for this, but saw waves work really well for Reese. So I'm just going to turn this up so it's a nice loud saw wave. And then let me make sure that's not clipping. Okay, so now I'm going to just start to chop this into some pieces. So here we have like 4 pieces, and I'm going to open up a MIDI channel, and I'm just going to drag, undo. I'm going to double click and then drag this in here, and it's going to put it into a sampler. I'm going to right click at the top and turn it into a sampler. So I'm going to get up to this start point here and turn the snap off and just kind of like... I'm going to start at the top of the waveform so there's a little bit of a pop. So I said I wanted to make like a bass. So something I'm going to grab right away is put this in an instrument rack and just open up a sub. So I guess I could just grab operator and let's open up a sub here. So I'm going to mute the other one and just listen to this. So I'll drop it down an octave. All right, so now we're going to do something called voice stacking. We're going to create unison, essentially. And the reason why I recorded such a long piece of this waveform here is because ideally it's sampled from an analog synth, let's say. So every one of these chunks is going to sound a little bit different. Just a very tiny bit different. So I'm going to drag each one of these. Actually, I'm going to save some time here and undo because I don't want to have to turn that into a sampler again. So here we have a sampler, so I'm going to duplicate this. And it already has the sample in it, so I'm just going to like change the start point. Duplicate it again. Kind of change the start point. Duplicate it again. And change the start point again. So now we have 4 voices on top of a sub. So if those were exactly the same, and they were starting in the same exact place, it would sound just louder. But because it's an analog modeled VST, they are all slightly different, which is why you have that weird overtone. So now I'm just going to kind of pan these. So I'm going to take this one and pan it all the way left, take this one, pan it all the way right, pan this one a little bit left, and this one a little bit right, and then we have this. Now, the ones that are farther panned, I'm going to turn them down a little bit. That way, the sound is still wide, but it's kind of more centered. And now on these more wide ones, I'm going to detune them a bit. And the narrow ones too, I'm just going to detune them very slightly. Tune the left one a little bit flat, the right one a little bit sharp. Now I turned the sub up there. I want the sub to be a good bit louder than the others. And now we're gonna saturate this. Now I'm gonna showcase a plugin maker that I love quite dearly. It's this guy Analog Obsessions, and he makes analog modeled plugins. So this is a great way to introduce a little non-linearity. So let's grab one of these EQs, like the SSQ. And this is a model of the SSL EQ, I believe, the rack mount, big rack mount SSL EQ. So already it sounds a little bit warmer. So let's turn the output down and then drive the input. So we're getting subtle saturation. Now let's get something else. Let's get maybe a tube saturation. Tuba, I think, is a tube saturator. Put that before the EQ. I'm going to go through here and just quickly turn off the velocity, or turn down the velocity tracking on some of these so that it's not as much of a velocity sensitive patch. Now I'm going to adjust the EQ here a little bit. I'm going to take off some of the high frequencies. Oh wait, let's see, which is the low pass? Low LF, I think, is the low filter. Oh, that's low frequencies. We can boost those a little bit. Boosting a little bit of 7K here. And then I'm just dipping out a little bit of the lower mids, around 700 hertz. And then up in like 14K, just gonna balance that down a little bit. Okay, now I'm gonna add a little bit of convolution reverb. So another favorite is M Convolution Easy. This is free. And I should mention that Analog Obsessions, he gives these plugins away by donation on Patreon. So if you go over to his Patreon, you can actually pick all these up without even having to pay him. But you should really throw him some dollars because they're really incredibly well-made plugins, and I love the way they sound. They sound very, very warm, very analog, and he does a lot of good work on them. So definitely throw him some money. But look at all these plugins I have from him. It's just it's a ton of plugins. All these right here. Let's try out another one. So FET drive maybe. So now I'm gonna saturate after I add some reverb. So let's just go into this reverb and high pass it up at like 400 hertz so that we're not messing with any of the low frequencies in the reverb. We're just adding that top end. I'm actually going to low pass the reverb a little bit too. And then let's go in and try out some of these halls. So now I'm going to start to saturate that reverb a bit with this Analog Obsessions FET drive. So we're getting somewhere. I'm going to put on Trash 2 and just get some more gnarly distortion going on now that we have that nice bed of warmth going on. So I'm going to go into this distort section and just try some of these, maybe amp drainer. Can maybe adjust the detuning a bit more here. Oh, I'm also going to turn these filters off because these filters do by default color the sound a little bit. So I'll turn all those filters off and then let's just detune these a bit more. We could try turning the sub up to be the same octave as the note, the other saw waves. Let's try some different reverb algorithms now. Let's try some of these churches. So that's the sound I'm going for right there, is this kind of blown out, gnarly, wide ass sound. But it's a little too wide. So now I'm going to go in with a little bit of Pro Q3 or whatever EQ of your choice that you would like to use. And I'm going to take off some of these highs. I'm going to take a little bit of the mids out, lower mids. So before all this saturation, it might be nice to have an analog modeled filter. So I'm going to grab the kilohertz ladder filter here. And let's just hear what that sounds like. So now we're going to be able to kind of, let's boost some resonance, and then we can play with the cutoff, and it'll distort in a nice way, hopefully. And I'm going to do a little bit of mid-side EQ here. So make a high-pass filter, turn that on side, and we're just going to cut the sides off around 200 hertz. Gonna try this ladder filter in different places, like perhaps after the first saturation and EQ saturator. And if we're gonna go for kind of a pad here, or not a pad, but something evolving like a pad would, let's grab Ableton's envelope modulator. And even if you don't have 11, you have access to this. It's just going to be in your Max for Live devices. But I think now it is in the modulators for Live 11. So not envelope follower, I'm sorry. I guess it would be a MIDI effect, so MIDI envelope here. And so now we have an envelope that we can map to things. So first and foremost, let's map the envelope to the ladder filter's cutoff. So now we have this. So to interject a little bit more movement from the source, let's go into the samplers, into the modulation tab, and just give a little bit of pitch wobble here. The LFO1's already turned on, and it's on retrigger, and let's take it off retrigger so that it's just kind of drifting along in the background. And let's just do like 1% pitch wobble, maybe on this one, take it off retrigger, maybe 80.88%. You know, not exactly the same amount. Give it a little bit on this one, a little bit of this one. And then let's actually change the speed here. Let's turn the speed down. So these are all just kind of drifting along, wobbling in the pitch a little bit. And then we can go in the operator here, and we can go into the LFO and turn it on. And by default, it's routed to wobble the pitch. So we can turn that down to maybe just 1% there as well. Edit. How do I edit the value? I guess I can just try shift dragging. There we go, 1%. So So if I want this to get a little bit more reverbed, I can take this envelope and open up this little hamburger menu here, and then we have more destinations we can map. So I can hit map, and then I can map this to the dry wet. And then if I want to attenuate the amount of that, maybe let's start at like 20% and just go to like 70%. So it's going to get more reverbed as the envelope progresses. Pretty cool. Okay, let's see. What else can we map this to? Let's map it to something else. Let's map it to the FET drive's tone, maybe? So I wonder what it sounds like high up. And there you have it. So we can give it a little more release, maybe. We can play with the envelopes here on the samplers, maybe give a little bit of release and attack to each one. Maybe the wider ones take a little longer to come in, so it gets wider as it goes along. gnarly. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to blend a little bit of the dry signal in. Even though I've been blending in a little bit, I'm going to group the entire shebang here from the first effect to the last one and just group that. And then create a parallel channel here and just mix it in, mix the gnarliness in. Okay, nice. Very gnarly. So that's an option if you want to tone it down a bit. I'm going to actually just leave it without that for now by muting the dry channel there. And now let's see what this sounds like as a mono synth. So I'm going to go into each voice here, and I'm going to go change the voices to 1 on each of the voices. Okay, so now, oh, we also have to go into the oscillator tab here, and I'm going to turn glide on. And let's set like a pretty long glide, like 140 milliseconds, glide about 140 milliseconds. You know, these values can be slightly different for each voice, and that'll give it a little bit more of a chorusy type effect. Here in the operator, let's also set, let's see, how do we set the glide in operator? I'm not a huge operator user, although I should be. Here we go, glide. It's in the pitch envelope section. Let's turn that up. So now we should have a gnarly ass mono synth. I'm gonna take this ladder filter we've got, and I'm gonna actually duplicate it over here again, and go over to the filter, and I'm gonna map again the cutoff. Okay, so I'm gonna actually also add some noise. So let's go in to my sample library, and I'm just actually gonna search noise here and see what comes up. There we go. Yeah, this stereo kind of like shower recording will be cool. So we can go here, change this to a sampler, go into the filter. I'm gonna put a high pass. I'm just gonna mute everything else and listen to this. So now let's go into the modulation section. And, oh, I'm sorry, the pitch/oscillator section. And here we have the ability to do audio rate modulation. So I'm going to turn on the oscillator, turn the sustain all the way up, and then I'm going to go here and turn this from FM, which is actually doing phase modulation. I'm gonna put this on AM, which is amplitude modulation. So it's going to make the volume of the noise go up and down really fast. It's going to make it sound kind of like a rattlesnake, like a. And if you noticed, I actually had grouped this because I actually want this noise to be outside of the instrument rack that is getting distorted to all hell. So I'm going to call this distortion synth. And then I'm going to call this the noise. So now you can hear it without being filtered and all that. I'm going to make sure to turn on looping and crossfade. So this is just going to be our kind of noise wash layer. It's going to sit on top of everything else. Give it a little filter envelope maybe. Now with everything else, I'm going to map the volume to the envelope here. Cinematic Reese bass time. Let's see. I think that will be it for now. I think that'll be it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. I'll put this patch up on my Patreon for the Patreon homies who support me. Try it with analog sampling. Sample a long length of your saw wave or square wave or whatever, and start playing around. There's so many ways you can go here. You can tune the oscillators differently. You can have some stacked octaves up. You can do this with FM synths. You can use soft synths. The main idea is to stack like 6 or 7 or 5, 6 or 7 or more panned oscillators, and they create this big wall, but then it sounds all weird and like kind of artificial, so then you distort it all together and it kind of glues it all together. You make sure that sub is a good bit louder than everything else so that the sub kind of starts to push everything out of the way, and then you add in some reverb, and then you distort the reverb, and you make sure to like EQ out some of those lows so that it doesn't get too boxy, and then you get a really cool, fun to play around with pad. You know, this is like, I was definitely going for like Blade Runner vibes here. It's like Doom vibes, but you know, you can do this in a more subtle way. You know, you can be much more subtle with this. I just wanted to go kind of like all out. But you can really tune it back. And yeah, until next time, I'm Sephiros, and thank you a million for watching.